The Division has a lot of stats to worry about. On armor alone, there are 24 non-skill based stats split into two groups, major and minor. One gripe that I've had with the game is that it seemed really difficult to min-max your gear, and that stats, at first glance, didn't really appear to be any fun to try to coordinate. It felt like only certain stats could roll on certain armor slots, and that is definitely true. It feels like the stats are spread so thin that it is very hard to actually put together a set of gear that defines an exact build. So before I went any further, I wanted to chart all of the stats. I wanted to see which stats could be rolled on what armor slots, and to see if I was just being a big baby about the whole thing, or to find out if my suspicions were true. Turns out it was a little bit of both. Here's the chart. Green is you can roll the stat, red is you can't. For example, you can roll the damage to elites stat on your mask, body armor, knee pads, and gloves. You can roll crit chance on your mask and gloves, you can roll skill power on your mask only, etc. This graphic is in the description for you to look at whenever you want to. So we can see that making a very specific build is going to be kinda tough. Most items can roll one or two major stats. You cannot stack two of the same stat on a piece of armor. You can't switch a minor stat into a major stat or the other way around. Whatever you have is what you have. So if you only rolled one minor stat, you're not going to be able to get another. However, some builds are easier than others. If you wanted an increased kill XP and scavenging build for the Dark Zone, something like that is actually pretty feasible since the amount of items that can roll those stats are low, and you can have both kill XP and scavenging on the same piece of armor provided that there are slots for it. The question I'd like to attempt to answer is what stats should you actually care about and what stats should you ignore? That is a very grand question, and it is not a simple question to answer. Obviously, the number one thing that people care about most is their damage. What stat is going to benefit me the most to make me deal the most damage? To even start thinking about this, I needed to set up my own DPS calculator. The game does have a DPS calculator, but this stat isn't exactly right all of the time. For example, the accuracy stat plays into your DPS, despite the fact that accuracy does not improve your damage in any way. Not to mention that the DPS stats and all stats in the game feel a little bit buggy and inaccurate sometimes. So, we're off to set up our own DPS calculator. But before I continue, I just want to lay down a disclaimer. I built this calculator over the past couple of days. However, there is a website that already exists called divisiondps.com, which is done by SkillUp here on YouTube. His channel is linked in the description. I was not intending to copy said concept. I knew I wanted to do something like this for a video ever since the game was released and even announced into beta. I just simply didn't know that this website already existed until someone pointed it out to me after I already finished my DPS calculator. But I did not want all of this work to go to waste. He absolutely did all of this first. I use a slightly different way to calculate the final DPS, but both my and his end results are the same down to the decimal. So what do we need to calculate our theory-crafted DPS? Well, we need a few things. Magazine size, RPM, reload speed, damage per shot, crit chance, crit damage, headshot damage, and the most ambiguous of all, headshot chance. Headshot chance is not a quantifiable thing in the same way that crit damage is. Headshot chance is not really chance, but rather it's your ability to hit headshots. In some cases, getting headshots is really easy, and in others, it's really hard. I put my default headshot chance modifier at 25%, as in 1 out of every 4 shots for me will be a headshot. You should alter yours as you see fit. Let's start from the top with magazine size and RPM. So here we are looking for how fast it will take me to fire one magazine from my gun given those stats. We do a little cross multiply to set up the formula. If it takes 60 seconds to fire 600 bullets, in my example, then it takes X seconds to fire 52 bullets. So we get 60 times magazine size divided by RPM. That's how long it takes to fire 52 shots. The math works out nice to 5.2 seconds. The reload speed of your weapon can be found on your character sheet, which is so nice to have. For me, it's 2.58 seconds, or at least it was when I was doing my theory crafting. Can I just say that as a side note, the stat page is ridiculously buggy and obnoxious. Despite not changing anything at all, I've seen my weapons have many different reload speeds. In the shooting range, I have fast reload speeds. Outside, I have slow reload speeds. Nothing changes, yet my stats change. Why is it when I have my primary weapon highlighted and tab over to my stats page, it goes to my secondary DPS stats? I don't know. It's so annoying. Anyway. Now we'll take our 5.2 seconds to fire an entire magazine and add it to our reload, and this is one rotation or cycle of damage. You need to include the reload as well since you can't do more damage without more bullets. Divide this by 60 for a full minute and we get 7.71 rotations. Decimals are fine for theory crafting, do not worry about those. So now we can figure out how many shots per minute we are going to take assuming we fire non-stop. This is just magazine size multiplied by rotation time, so 401.03 bullets. I know that doesn't make sense, but don't worry about it. Now we need to start filtering where those shots are landing and the crit chance with the crit damage. Out of 401 shots with a 26.5% crit chance, we will get 106 crits. Then we multiply that by our headshot chance percentage to figure out approximately how many of those shots will be crit headshots. We take the 401 minus the 106 to figure out how many non-crits we will get, so that's 295 non-crits. Multiply that by our headshot chance percentage stat to figure out how many non-crit headshots we'll get. So now we have all of those numbers. 26.57 headshot crits, 79.7 non-headshot crits, 73.69 headshot hits, and 221.07 non-headshot hits. Now we need to figure out how much damage we are doing with each bullet. For me, I'm doing 9,980 damage versus a non-elite, non-armored enemy. Multiply the crit modifier, which is 25%, to figure out crit hits, multiply by the headshot mod to get headshot hits, multiply the crit and headshot mods to get headshot crits. Headshot damage and crit damage are multiplicative, not additive. So regular hits, 9,980 damage, crits are 12,475, headshots are 17,465, and crit headshots are 21,831. Multiply these numbers by the number of shots that we take in a full minute. You add all of that together, divide by 60 for a full minute, and that is your theory-crafted DPS number. Multiply by your damage to elites to find out your theory-crafted damage to elites DPS. Obviously, this doesn't match up with the in-game sheets, and that's because I don't know how the game calculates DPS. But from a pure stat-driven perspective, this is how to theory-craft your damage. Note that theory-crafted damage is not really damage that's possible to do. The DPS values given assume that you hit every shot, you hit the exact amount of shots that are proportioned, you are at optimal range, aka doing max damage per shot, and you are constantly shooting. That is simply not possible to maintain in a real-world environment, not even remotely close. Instead, you should use it as a guideline as to what could potentially give you more damage. At first glance, damage to elites and crit damage seems to be the best bang for your buck. A 5% increase in crit damage versus a 5% increase in headshot damage is more in favor of the crit damage. Headshot damage only does apply to headshots, while crit damage can be applied on any point of the body. A 5% increase in crit chance versus a 5% increase in crit damage is almost dead even in this example. A 5% increase in damage against elites kicks the crap out of both a 5% increase in crit chance or damage, because 5% damage to elites is around a 4.2% DPS increase, while the crit bonuses are only around 1% increase in DPS. However, this is only versus elites, but elite enemies make up the majority of the endgame. So that's a pretty basic intro into DPS stats. The in-game calculator isn't completely reflective of your true DPS. It takes into account stuff like accuracy as a DPS increase, despite the fact that accuracy doesn't give you an actual number increase. The thing that nothing can account for is your aim and your ability to get headshots. If you do not have the thumb skill to maximize the effect of a stat, then it might not exactly be a DPS increase after all. but stats are much more complicated than saying X is better than Y in every scenario. There are so many things at play that make your DPS go up or down. Magazine size, rate of fire, damage, crit damage, headshot damage, damage versus elites. Quantities of stats matter as well. 5% damage to elites is better than 5% crit chance, but is it better than 20% crit chance? It might be, but then that depends on your crit damage as well. The only way to really find out is to math it all out, which is why something helpful like divisiondps.com exists. You just plug in your numbers and you see what turns out higher. The next thing I'd like to explore is health versus armor, so I'll be working on that over the next few days. That's going to do it for me on DPS. Once again, please check out the website divisiondps.com for any DPS needs or stats or theory crafting on anything like that. And check out Skill Up on YouTube, both of them linked in the description. Division DPS is run by Skill Up. It's not run by me, so ask him questions instead of me. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.